Netanyahu was hurting Israel. Biden's wrong. Close allies United States and Israel butted heads over the weekend after U.S. President Joe Biden stepped up pressure on his Israeli counterpart Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, warning he's hurting Israel by killing thousands of civilians during its war on the besieged territory of Gaza. During an interview with MSNBC, Biden lashed out at the Israeli Prime Minister for his country's conduct in the war when he said Netanyahu must pay more attention to the innocent lives being lost as a consequence of the actions taken. He's hurting, in my view. He's hurting Israel more than helping Israel by making the rest of the world. It's contrary to what Israel stands for, and I think it's a big mistake. So I want to see a ceasefire, and I'm starting with a major exchange of prisoners for a 6-week period. We're going into Ramadan. There should be nothing happening, and we should build off of that ceasefire. A furious Netanyahu hit back a day later by rejecting his staunch ally Biden's comment. In an interview with Politico, Netanyahu, fondly called Bibi, said if Biden meant that I'm pursuing private policies against the majority, the wish of the majority of Israelis, and that this is hurting the interests of Israel, then he's wrong on both counts. Netanyahu has been facing flack from across the world for the high civilian death toll in Gaza since the October 7 Hamas attack, which has crossed the 30,000 mark, with most of the deceased being children and women. Since the beginning of the war, Israel under the Bibi-led far-right regime has been backed by the Joe Biden administration not just politically, but financially, militarily, and diplomatically. However, growing international and domestic criticism in the run-up to the 2024 presidential elections seems to have forced Biden to change his stance and publicly fire the Israeli leader. Apart from the high civilian casualty, Biden also seems concerned about Netanyahu's adamancy to launch a ground offensive in Rafah, the last refuge of at least 1.4 million Palestinians displaced by the war, irrespective of a ceasefire with Hamas, which attacked Tel Aviv on October 7, killing at least 1,139 people and taking 240 hostages. On the impending Rafah assault, Biden told MSNBC that it's a red line, but added that he's never going to leave Israel. The defense of Israel is still critical, so there's no red line I'm going to cut off all weapons, so they don't have the Iron Dome to protect them. They don't have, but there's red lines that if he crosses and they continue, you cannot have 30,000 more Palestinians dead as a consequence of going after. There's other ways to deal with the trauma caused by Hamas. Netanyahu, unfazed by Biden's warning, told Politico that he will move into Rafah, dismissing Biden's red line. The Israeli Prime Minister said, "We'll go there. We're not going to lead them. You know, I have a red line. You know what the red line is? That October 7 doesn't happen again. Never happens again." Observers say that Biden's warnings ring hollow as his regime continues its support to Israel's war on Gaza. A Washington Post investigation published last week revealed the administration has quietly approved and delivered more than 100 separate weapon sales to Israel over the last 5 months. However, only 2 approved foreign military sales to Israel have been made public since the launch of Israel's assault on October 7, which the Biden administration approved using emergency authority to bypass Congress. The United States has also vetoed 3 United Nations Security Council resolutions calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. It also defended Israel's actions at the International Court of Justice, known as the World Court, while almost every other nation at the top UN court blasted Tel Aviv's decades-long occupation of Palestinian territory and use of force against Palestinians. With Washington publicly voicing reservations over the mounting death toll in Gaza, but both privately and publicly backing its war efforts, analysts suggest that these exchanges between Biden and Netanyahu should not be seen as anything more than banter.